Hello, AP Psychology students. I am sorry I can't be with you again today. I have our Social Studies Curriculum Review meeting, so I'm over at the Fairview building working with other social studies teachers. I will be back tomorrow. So I just want to make sure that we get all of these notes taken down so that we're ready for our test, which is of course a week from tomorrow, December 18th. So yesterday you talked about Freud's psychosexual stages, and today we're going to talk about Freud's ideas about accessing the unconscious. There are a number of methods for accessing the unconscious. The most obvious one is probably hypnosis, which actually Freud did not particularly care for. So that's going to be last, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But there are actually a number of ways to access the unconscious, and the first way is through projective tests. Projective tests provide ambiguous stimuli designed to trigger the projection of one's inner dynamics. There are a couple different types of projective tests. The first one are Rorschach inkblot tests. You've probably seen these before on TV or in movies where people are shown an image that looks just like, ink spilled on a sheet of paper, and then the person interviewing asks them, well, what do you see? And the person's like, I see a dog, I see a cat, I see a family. And so the interviewer then analyzes what people say they see in those ink blots and analyze how that reflects our inner feelings and conflicts. It's generally used as an icebreaker or as an interview technique for the most part. And tomorrow you will actually have the opportunity to do ink blot testing. So you'll get with a partner because, of course, tomorrow, remember...
Mr. Wallace, dial 8664. Mr. Wallace, 8664, or come to the main office.
Tomorrow, remember, is early dismissal. So tomorrow we're going to do a lab where you'll have a chance to interview somebody and show them pictures, and then they'll tell you what they see, and you will be the interviewer who analyzes what that means about them, and then you'll switch roles, and then they will do the interview, and you will tell them what you see in those images, and they'll analyze you, and then you'll have a chance to share it with each other. So we'll work with ink blot tests tomorrow. The second type of projective test is a thematic apperception test, or a TAT. This is where people express their inner feelings and interests through the stories that they make up about ambiguous pictures. So in the thematic apperception test, we're talking about you show somebody a picture and they tell a story. I see two people walking through the woods towards a house. I think it's their house. They're going to go have a nice dinner. Maybe it's their anniversary. And you go on and on and on about making up this story about this picture. So with thematic apperception test, we're talking about making up a story about a picture, whereas with the Rorschach inkblot, it's just tell me what you see in this picture, and then they analyze what all of those ideas mean about you. The second way that we can access the unconscious is through humor. We laugh at what disturbs us unconsciously. Humor allows us to express unacceptable topics in a socially acceptable manner. So the best example I can give you for this, I think, is the TV show Family Guy. They are notorious for writing episodes that talk about really inappropriate things in really inappropriate ways. Maybe South Park would be another really good example, right? Like, it's talking about things that are unacceptable or inappropriate, and yet making it a joke somehow makes it socially acceptable. I have a friend who always used to say there's a truth in every sarcasm. So you say it as a joke, but in fact that is actually what you mean to say, but by saying it as a joke, somehow it stings less, or it makes it less unacceptable to say those things, right? Or I think now we would probably make the joke about saying something really, hurtful or maybe even true, but it comes off as harsh, so you put the smiley face emoticon after it, like as if that somehow is like, oh, that's just a joke, everybody, haha, LOL, when in fact that was what you meant to say, but it was unacceptable to say it outright, so then you just say, LOL, JK, that's not really what I meant, when in fact it is. So there are lots of TV shows and movies. I think Judd Apatow has had, about a dozen shows. Superbad is the first one that comes to mind, where people ask you, oh, did you go see that movie? Yeah, I did. It was super funny. Super inappropriate, but really funny. And you have to sort of give that caveat of like, I recognize that this movie, Superbad, is super inappropriate, but it was also really funny. And so it's almost like you feel like you have to say to people, like, I know this is not okay to say these things. Or you sit in the movie theater and you're like, oh my gosh, I should not even be laughing about this. I should not laugh at this, but it's funny, so you laugh. So humor is another way that we gain access to the unconscious. The third way Freud believed that we gained access to the unconscious was through what he called parapraxes, or Freudian slips. He believed that Freudian slips were the unconscious leaking out. He did not believe that Freudian slips were accidental, and in fact, they were generally very embarrassing for people, and most often Freudian slips are sexual in nature. If you go on YouTube and search 10 best Freudian slips, there's a whole 2-minute video clip that we don't have time for today that would completely give hilarious examples of generally news anchors who are reading their prompters and they read the word wrong and it comes out just all wrong and it's mortifying for everybody. So that's Freudian slips. The fourth way that we access the unconscious is through dreams. And actually dreams is what Freud believed was the royal road, I'm using air quotes right now, the royal road to the unconscious mind. So he believed this was our best way of accessing someone's true unconscious. The manifest content is the remembered storyline of a dream. So it's the stuff that, only I know what I dream about, right? Like I'm the only person who can say what I dreamt about. The latent content is what we gain access to through someone who has training in psychoanalytic theory. So I can tell anybody about my dream, right? I was talking last week about that nightmare I had about somebody abducting my kid, right? I can tell you what that was about, but only somebody like Freud could tell me what that really means. Like what was the underlying meaning, the latent content of that dream. So, for example, you have a dream that there's a bear chasing you through the woods. That's the manifest content. You can go tell anybody, I had a dream last night that a bear was chasing me. That was weird. But you could go see a therapist who has training in psychoanalysis, and that person could say, actually what that was really about was your father's anger about the D you got on your chemistry test. That's the latent content. So there are lots of different ways that therapists get this information out. If you're really interested in dream analysis, Miss Veggie has a couple different books downstairs in her room about dream analysis. Like, it is generally regarded in psychology that if you dream about losing your teeth, there's a generally accepted idea about what that means, the latent content of, the very common dreams that people have. Losing their teeth, walking around naked when everybody else is clothed. Falling is another really common dream, when you dream that you're falling and you wake up right before you hit ground. Those are all very common dreams. And if you go downstairs and ask Miss Veggie to look at her books, they could tell you then what those types of dreams mean. And those are generally accepted in the psychoanalytic psychology community as there's generally accepted latent content for each of those types of dreams. So there are lots of books about dream analysis. You could pay an actual therapist to tell you about dream analysis, because ultimately Freud believed that this was the best way to access our unconscious. If you went to a therapist, what would happen is, in therapy, you would start by talking about the dream you recall, the manifest content, there was a bear chasing me in the woods, and then you would free associate or relax and say whatever comes to mind without any censorship, right? You're not going to pause, you're not going to think twice, you're just going to go, talk. No thinking, just talk. And by free associating, the psychoanalyst would be able to get to the latent content of that dream. So the last type of, or last way that you can gain access to the unconscious is hypnosis. So as I was saying before, Freud tried hypnosis but decided that it wasn't ideal because people don't resist or remember typically what they said or did while hypnotized. So he didn't really like hypnosis as a way of accessing the unconscious. And note, there's this little asterisk here that says, for all of the above situations about accessing the unconscious, Any conscious resistance, Freud believed, was a doorway to some very significant topic in the person's unconscious mind. So if you think back to that video we watched in first trimester about false memories and how that one woman went to a therapist who eventually was jailed for what he did. And remember that that person hypnotized her and told her in her hypnosis sessions that her dad was like a cult leader and that he had sexually abused her and like given her all of these memories that didn't actually happen. The more that she resisted it, if Freud were watching that video, or if Freud were speaking to that woman who had that happen to her, he would have said that the more she resisted it, the more that he would have believed that that was a topic that was something to be investigated and a very significant topic in their unconscious mind. So Freud would have said, you know, if you had a dream and Freud said to you, you know, you had this dream because you're afraid of failure, and you're like, absolutely not. I am not afraid of failing. In fact, I fail all the time. This is not, like, that is not it. The more you resisted, Freud would have been convinced that that is exactly what was going on in your unconscious.